So I'm here today with Andy Albert, who is the owner of Indy Card Exchange up here in Fishers, Indiana, just on the northeast side of Indianapolis. And Andy is the owner of one of the finest card shops I think anyone will ever come to. It's such a beautiful place, and I just wanted to start out with asking, how long have you owned the shop, and sort of how did that come to be?
Good question. Thank you, by the way.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that compliment. We're trying to make it one of the best shops.
It's great. Yeah.
One of the destination places in the country, honestly. So I've owned the shop for exactly 10 years now.
Okay.
I collected my whole life and had the opportunity back in 2011, 2012, was kind of working with the owner of this shop and we were really close because I was one of his best customers, opening a ton of wax, right?
Yeah.
And I just had that dream that just never went away as a kid of owning a shop, and we talked about it. Took a while for him to even warm up to the idea,
sure.
But and he was near retirement and didn't really know what to do, but the opportunity arose for him to make some money. So he came back to me finally about 6 months after we had that initial discussion, and I made him a fair offer, and he actually named the price and everything, which was kind of fun because I was not going to miss out an opportunity because I saw such a good opportunity for the sports card market to grow in this area locally. And May 1st of 2012, it happened. So it's been almost exactly 10 years since then.
So when you were a kid, that's sort of always, I'm assuming you went to school for other things, or you had another career before this?
Yeah, I had a business degree from Taylor University and then went into the lab diagnostics world as sales manager for LabCorp. With a smaller lab that LabCorp acquired for 16 years.
Wow.
So I kind of, for 5 of those 16 years, I had actually done both jobs, owning the shop and working at the lab and having 4 kids at the same time. So the plate was pretty full at that time. But it was worth every second because, this is an industry you have to make sure that you are staying ahead of the game. Yes. Because if you fall behind, it's a slippery slope.
Right.
And from a business perspective, the best strategy that I could do and give to anybody else that has that aspiration of having a shop is try to be as debt-free as quickly as possible.
Sure.
And that's what I tried to do by working a full-time job and not collecting any income and trying to get this thing, fully paid off with the banks and yada, yada, yada. So all the inner workings of stuff that people don't realize when it comes to having a shop.
Yeah, it's definitely a big undertaking, and I think that, just the amount of work it takes to get to that point is
it's a lot.
Pretty significant. It's not just you got to rent. There's all kinds of financial implications, and you said 2012, and that kind of rings a bell here in Indianapolis. Well, it rings a nastier tone bell now than it did at the time.
The sting still hurts a little bit.
Yeah, but 2012, of course, was the year that Andrew Luck got drafted.
Yeah.
And so did that play a part? Because I feel like it
was a major part.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know this because I've done a couple other interviews, but one of the things that I asked when I bought the shop, Richard, the gentleman I bought it from, we were going to close the deal on September 1st of 2012. Mm-hmm. I said, listen, if you're willing to move it up to May 1st of 2012, I would give you an extra $10,000 to buy the shop, just to incentivize him to move it up 4 months because of Luck just getting drafted.
So was that right after the draft?
It was right after the draft. The draft was in April. We all knew Luck was the number 1 pick, and I knew that there was going to be product rolling in with an opportunity to make some fairly quick money because of Andrew Luck. So, he was all about it, and that's why we were able to bump it up and move that because of Andrew Luck's draft.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So did you have a previous space before this, or has this always been the space that you had?
This has only been here for a year and 2 months now, and we were over in Nora at 86 and Westfield Boulevard.
Okay.
Small little strip mall, kind of tucked back next to North Central High School. And that shop had been there from day one. So that shop was like 28 to 29 years old when we moved here to this location.
Gotcha.
The business itself has been around for 30 years now. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
And so was obviously during the pandemic, the business side really kind of took off.
Yeah.
I'm relatively new, last June is kind of when I started. But, I of course heard about the big boom and stuff. So did that have a big influence on why you wanted to move to a new space? Or was it just kind of like that you were thinking about it for a while and the timing was right?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
It's kind of an answer to all that question. Yes, we were already looking because I had a lease that was about to expire last year, obviously, with the old place. But I knew that wasn't the long-term place at all.
Sure.
It was half the size I wanted it to be. The building was wearing down. We didn't know what their intentions were with the building itself. They wouldn't give us any details. They wouldn't do any improvements to help us. It was just one of those strategies. I'd been scouting for almost a year before we finally signed a lease to move to this location. So, it's multiple facets. Number one, the space is perfect. Number two, the location's good to where I live, so I can be with my family a little bit more, because that's important to me too. And I felt like the north side was, it's ripe for Fishers, Westfield, Carmel, Zionsville, and you go out east towards, Greenfield and Newcastle, New Pal, things like that. So and we're still getting a lot of indie business and everything too. I just felt like the location was right. And I really studied it. Parking, you were here at our trade night.
Yeah.
We needed parking that night.
Yeah, and it's also really easy to get to too, because the highway's right there, and the 465 loop is right there. So.
Another factor when it went into it.
Yeah.
Little did I know we were going to rent a former Mexican restaurant. If you ever saw those videos from when I did the whole process.
No, I didn't. I need to check
those
out.
Yeah, it's on Instagram.
Okay, yeah.
It was underneath these carpet squares are red Spanish tiles.
Oh my gosh.
They had little tiki huts or whatever you call them on the sides of the restaurant. It was a process, that's for sure.
It definitely takes a vision to transform a space like
no
that.
doubt.
But you certainly did a great job.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit more about the business side of things. Obviously, owning a space like this or renting a space like this is a significant amount of overhead cost, and I think that a lot of people are transitioning to just online business. At least that's sort of how they start, and then if it gets to a point where they can open up a retail space. But what do you think the challenges are of having a space like this?
That's another good question too. When it comes to challenges, the challenge is the overhead, right?
Yeah.
Because the business when it was booming, it was smaller overhead at the old shop. Only 2 to 3 employees because of COVID lockdown, because all we had to do was be online and ship. So, I do kind of somewhat envy the online guys because they don't have as much overhead, but I also, on the flip side, that's not my strategy. It's never been my strategy. My strategy is about relationships.
Yeah.
And I want to see people, talk to people, get to know people, help them, and educate them before they actually dive into this hobby, because it's overwhelming. But, back to your question, there was probably... I would say just the overall cost of everything is always giving me heartburn. Let's put it that way.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
People don't realize how much that goes into it. And the margins were good during COVID. Now, because of what's going on in the manufacturing world with Panini and Topps and Upper Deck and Fanatics taking over all these different facets, you've got margins that are shrinking for guys like us. And product allocations are also shrinking for guys like us. Yeah. So it makes it more challenging. I'm not going to do anything that affects my employees, because I love every single person that works here. You talk about relationships, they mean everything to me. So how do you take that step ahead and be more creative on making money to sustain, to thrive, to stay profitable, and to make sure customers are getting stuff at the right value?
Right.
Singles, wax, supplies, it's a multifaceted game that we have to always strategize around.
And I think logistically it's probably got to be a challenge too, because, you're talking to distributors, you're talking directly, because I know you guys have a direct relationship with Panini and Topps as well.
Yep.
And then managing all the prices where you feel like you're giving a fair price to your customers, where also you have to maintain everything that you have here. I get overwhelmed sometimes, but it's easy for me because I could just take a couple of weeks off and, do my regular job.
Right.
Whereas you, it's, you have to be constantly buying, constantly checking the markets, constantly trying to innovate. And it's just again, I don't think people think about all those extra steps that go into things.
And I always encourage, I've talked to a lot of bustling business owners that want to get started, entrepreneurs that want to be in this world, whether it's a brick and mortar, whether it's online, whether it's YouTube podcasts, whatever it is. I want to be there to help them because I have kind of gone through the ups and the downs of the hobby as a collector and as a business owner. And one of the advices I give people is don't get stuck in kind of the microeconomic aspect of this business, because if you focus on just cards, like one or two cards that you just can't lose money on, and next thing you know, it kind of balloons, right? Yeah. Or wax, there's probably 100 products on the shelf right now. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you 25% of those products I'm losing money on right now. Wow. Because we had to buy them at a higher price, or they've already come down since we bought them when they first came out.
Right.
It's about the macro number, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the part that took me forever as a collector. My mindset is, oh gosh, I bought this for X dollar. I need to sell it for Y dollar and make my money and move on. You got to look at the macro part of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge encouragement I give to people.
Yeah,
And
that's great advice, and that's actually something that I advocate for too. And once again, I'm relatively new, but
Yeah.
the one, you know, I mainly set up at shows or go to shows, and I am never afraid to lose money on a cards because if I'm sitting on it for even a month,
yeah,
and everyone comes to my showcase every month and they see the same cards, you know, like it's better for me to lose $5, $10, $20, $50 on a card that I've been sitting on for too long,
exactly,
and just, you know, make some money back and move on.
Yeah.
And put it into something else where I can, you know, so cash flow is really important.
100%.
I think.
Keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Right?
And absolutely. And you talk about relationships. I mean, if there's anyone that kind of nails that aspect, I think you do.
Thank you.
And you know, it's so weird the way our relationship developed because, you know, I think you saw me kind of showing up at shows, and then I came in the shop one day and immediately we were on a first name basis. You take care of me every time I'm in here. You always say hi, and I think that's and I'm not alone in this. Every person who walks through that door, I feel like you give the same treatment to, and so that's, you know, a very enviable thing. I think so.
Thank you.
Is that something that you actively try to?
It is. It comes naturally because my mindset from day one is it's always more than cards, right?
Of course.
Like it's relationships. Like I don't care if you want to buy or sell something that day.
Right.
Let's find out how you're doing. Let's find out what's going on in life. And, you know, there's days I'm busy and I feel bad that I don't get to like really sink into a relationship that I could probably tell somebody does want to chat about stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's just an instinctual thing, you know, where you want to be able to know the person before you know the business part of that relationship.
Right.
It makes it smoother. Like not every relationship's perfect. There's going to be rocky roads and stuff. And I think those kind of like relationship stronger foundations allow, when there are bad times, to get things settled a lot faster.
Yeah.
It makes
sense. It's easier
sense.
to put the water under the bridge.
It is. And it's not just in cards. Obviously, it's in life. Like, have that stronger relationship built so that when the times come, when we all know they will come, not if, it's a when, we can work things out faster and make things right and move forward and keep that relationship strong without breaking any sort of relationship bond.
Right.
Yeah, it's important to me.
And I feel like you really nail it. And it's, you know, I view you as one of my mentors, and I'm very fortunate to be in this Indianapolis community. I feel like it's a very tight community. And
it is.
Lots of very friendly people, and
for sure.
And everyone's in it to help each other do better. So, and I feel like you're kind of leading the charge in that. So it's very important for everyone here.
Thank you.
So to the business side of things, obviously I look around the shop and you got so many different things available. You have memorabilia, you have obviously this wall of wax in front of us. You have singles in the showcase, you have supplies, you have lower end singles in the boxes. And I know you guys do some online stuff. So sort of what's the breakdown of kind of where you do most of your sales, or where do you try to allocate your business?
So sales in general, like when you break it down, like product categories, it's wax. Wax is the number one like quantity of sales.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's where the quality and margins are per se. Like I said,
that's interesting because I always thought it would have been there, but I guess with the distributors and all the
it's the toughest it's ever been, right?
Really?
Well, yeah, because from when I first bought this business, I could pretty much get whatever and whenever and however I wanted, product-wise. Tops and distributors would throw me. If I want to, I can give you a bad story. 2014 Topps Chrome football had Johnny Manziel, and it had Blake Bortles, and it had, now it has guys like Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr, Odell Beckham. Gosh, just random, right?
Yeah.
And we thought because of Johnny Football, this product was going to take off. Well, Topps didn't have what they have now, where they actually limit the number of product they make, and then they tell you what you're going to get.
Right.
Back then it was, here's 2014 Topps Chrome football. Who wants it? How much do you want? Well, next thing I know, I show up with 72 cases of Topps Chrome football. And I'm like, holy crap, what am I going to do with all this? Well, we thought the product was still going to make money. It tanked immediately. I mean, like,
interesting.
the first day it released, people realized that you couldn't get any good hits out of it because Topps just flooded the market with it. It was like the 80s, 90s all over again with one product. Two factors. Number one, I lost 25% of my money in the first 2 days of that being released. And 25% of 72 cases is not chump change, right?
No.
Number two, I still had my other job. If I didn't have my other job, Indy Card Exchange probably wouldn't even be here.
That's on one product?
One product.
Wow.
Because it was, again, back then, we're talking about, okay, what do we have to sell and make this week to cover payroll? What do we have to sell and make this week to pay for all the product that came in? It was a whole different mindset, right?
Yeah.
And it was tough, but it was fun. It was creative, strategic, because I still wanted money to buy collections if they walked in.
Of course.
We're not dealing with the same kind of like magnitude of money of cards right now than it was even 8 years ago.
Right.
But anyway, going back to my point, that was a situation where the manufacturers were just throwing stuff at you without even worrying about quantities and price. Now, it's a whole different ballgame. The same manufacturer is saying, you used to get 6 of these cases, now you're getting 2, and then you can rebuy them at the full market
That's crazy.
prices. So you have to take that cumulative average from a business perspective and then factor in cost and factor in what we can put on the shelf.
Yeah, I was talking with Kevin about this actually at the show last weekend or a couple weekends ago, and he was saying that the way you guys do is you average out your prices so that it's not like the first round is this and the second round is this.
You can't.
Yeah. That's wild. And now obviously the demand is so much higher than the supply, and then there's also a huge aftermarket demand, which also drives up the prices, even on the retail stuff.
Yep.
And so all these breakers and stuff, they're just chronically wanting more product and more product and more product.
And breakers are the reason, good and bad, right? For all this high demand, lower supply. And I'm not opposed to breaking. I love the online breakers. I mean, I'm friends with a lot of good online breakers out there. And 2012 was when online breaking first started. Okay. Like Leighton Sports Cards and Mojo Break and a couple other guys like Live Case Break that I know personally, they were just getting their teeth cut in 2012, 2013.
Interesting.
We didn't even really know what it was until probably 2015, personally. And all of a sudden it was like, oh boy, here we go. Then the floodgates open. So it's good.
And I think that, it's interesting to think about it because, everyone complains about the price of the cards, but the reason your prices of your singles and stuff are where they are is because of those breakers. Yeah. So of course everyone wants to be able to walk into Walmart and buy whatever you want, but then you're opening cards that aren't worth as much. And so then is that really what you want? Or is it?
And people ask me that question, like, why are things so expensive? I said, it's an economies of scale situation. Economies of scale, meaning when you bought it for 25 and sold it for 30, that was the same level playing field. Now you're buying it for 100 and have to sell it for 120 or something like that, right? It's the same products per se, but the demand raises this level, but your margins are still kind of the same if you think about it. You just have to pay more and get more and try to make it work in that situation.
So you want to talk a little bit about what you have on your singles and your supplies and stuff like that. Supplies, I'm assuming, is pretty similar to wax, but it's less in demand, I guess.
Well, it used to be. Plastic is ridiculous now. It's like a fight for top loaders, which I never thought that would be the case ever in my life. But no, I mean, we still get it because we order so much. The long-standing relationships with some of the distributors that I, acquired versus started with, that helped out a lot too. Another advantage of buying a shop versus starting a shop. Encourage anybody that has that aspiration to, maybe acquire versus start, because right now I think it's really, really, really difficult to start from scratch. I commend High Five that you did an interview with. Those guys starting from scratch, and I'm here to support them as much as I possibly can. And Bloomington's a great, ripe community for a card shop, but I know they're struggling. We've had conversations directly to get product and to get supplies.
Just
and
to get
try
wax is like, they have to buy it after market and then it's tough.
I do feel for them, and I'm here to help a shop like that because I want to see that community grow down in Bloomington area in southern Indiana. But anyway, back to the supplies are, whenever they're available, we get them, right? And we're trying to keep up with that. I actually went with a different box manufacturer to try to get more quantity because there was so much inconsistency with what people had in stock with other box manufacturers. So more strategic ways to try to grow the business and keep the costs as low as possible and still be able to have products at the right price compared to what secondary market's at.
And about your singles too. Like the one thing I really respect and appreciate about you, it's always so fair, the pricing. And is that something that you actively try to do? And just, I mean, I can come in here and sometimes get better deals than I can at shows. It's not like that in a lot of retail stores or local card shops.
Right. And you learn quickly that you have to be at market.
Right.
Again, even if you're losing a 20% on what you paid for the product, it's got to move.
Yep.
If it doesn't move, it's going to collect dust.
Right.
Keeping it fresh, like I told you, on the single side is probably the most important. Mm-hmm. And I like to be the filter of buying. Jake does a good job. He's got free reign to buy whatever. A couple other guys in the shop have reign at a certain limit to buy certain stuff.
Sure.
But to me, you have to keep moving singles. And that's why you said fair pricing right now. We look at market, we price at a certain price that we think where market's at, and then hopefully can sell it and move it. And I want to keep it where, there's the investor card person in the world. And they're the ones buying the high-end stuff. So what does an investor want? They want the good thing at a better deal, right?
Exactly.
So I get it. I totally understand that. So let's try to provide them at that better deal price and still work and buy stuff at a fair price too. So it's such a, it's not a tangled web, but it's just a very interesting and difficult process to try to make sure that everybody's getting a chunk of what they want. When they want it, how they want it. At the price that they want it.
Yeah, and every time I've done a deal with you, it's always been incredibly fair, and that's why I come back.
I appreciate it.
There's I'm not trying to badmouth anybody, but there's definitely certain dealers at shows and stuff that I just kind of don't go to their table because it's not because they have bad stuff or anything, but they're not willing to make fair deals, and so I like them as people, but it's not. It's not where I want to take my business, but I always come in here. You always have new stuff, and I always buy. So,
and they have, I'm not a bad mouther either. I don't do that. But there's people that have more sentimental attachment,
of course,
and they're getting caught in that. I paid X, I gotta make Y.
Right.
Don't care.
And they're totally welcome to do that.
Yeah,
that is
exactly. That's capitalism at its finest,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But one other thing too is I've found a very good mental divide on sentimental versus monetary and business. And the sentimental side is my Jordan collection.
Right.
And the Jordan Kobe's and a little bit of vintage that I've really that to me, and my Notre Dame collection, but sentimental. I'll pay whatever.
Yeah.
If I don't have it, great. I had zero intention to sell it. Right. Anything else is fair game.
Yeah. That's cool. And then I guess the last thing too is you have some really cool memorabilia. I love these. The jerseys that are framed, they're auto jerseys that are framed and they have pictures around them. So I think it just looks great, if nothing else, in the shop.
Right. Thank you. I wish we could sell more memorabilia, but it's more eye candy than it is anything. It looks good, like you said. I love the coloring, everything. It just makes the shop kind of stand out even more.
Absolutely.
But it's an interesting marketplace.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's just us, but for some reason, memorabilia, it's like a fraction of a % of the overall revenue for the shop. But man, does it look good?
It looks great, and I think it's just you got to find the right buyer because you got to find someone who wants to display it in their dwelling.
Yep.
But so, what do you think the future is of Indy Card Exchange? Obviously, you said you got to be constantly innovating stuff. But do you plan on doing more online stuff, more breaks, more content? Any plans you're willing to reveal for the future?
That's I I think the answer again is yes to all of those. We have strategies in place of how can we grow the business. And again, I know it sounds really weird and it sounds kind of off-putting, but I'm not always thinking about what's the next revenue maker.
Of course, yeah.
I'm thinking about what's good for the hobby in Indiana as a whole, and how can we contribute to that, and how can we grow, with it. In that way. And the revenue will come with that, I think. I really do feel that way.
Right.
The one strategy was the grading side. Hired Kevin a year ago, and the grading side is taking off because we're doing in-person reviews.
Which are great, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. And he does an awesome job.
Mm-hmm.
Those type of things are kind of, I think, a step ahead of the curve because people view us as a professional and they trust our opinion.
Yep.
Trust is number one. I know I've talked about all these different things. Trust is number one in this business.
Yep.
I don't care what you say. I don't care what people think and what your impressions are, but one thing that hopefully will fall when the chips fall is this place is trustworthy.
Yep, exactly.
Bottom line. going back, I'm a tangent guy,
That's
right?
I love a good tangent.
Grading is huge. I think we've got probably 2 or 3 more big steps we can take to improve that part of the business, and we're already working on those. Online, it's a really weird marketplace, right? So online, one of my best friends in the hobby is RBI Crew, Ryan Bannister. And his business, he has taken the online part of his website and sales to a crazy catastrophic level.
Sure.
Not catastrophic. Well, the good side of catastrophic. Yeah, that's not a good word. Good adjective.
Exponential. Whatever. I know what you mean.
Big growth, right?
Yes,
and huge growth in the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, huge. And I'm so proud of him for doing that. He took a strategy and ran with it and grew. That hasn't really been our strategy. Like we have our website, we have product on our website, but because of how much walk-in business we have in our brick and mortar, we don't get to put much on our website because it sells here in the shop.
Yeah.
So our online strategy has kind of scaled back a little bit, even though we're still going to try to keep a presence. Then you go to content. You know, I'm talking to a guy who's working hard to create content, and I respect that. I love it. You got 1,000 subscribers now. I'm proud of you. Hopefully you get to 2,000 faster than you got to 1,000. Yeah. Content's important, and what I think from a content perspective is what people can get from us as a card shop, from me, from Dave, from Glenn, from Matt, Drew, Kevin, anybody that's out here, Jake, free content. I'm willing to give you the advice at no charge. Yep. I want that relationship established because it hopefully gets you to come back in the shop.
Yep.
So when you see stuff online, I'm not one that's like pushing one thing over another and, you know, trying to create subscribers or followers. It comes naturally, but I think content's important, but I think trustworthy content when it comes to this shop is the most important thing to us. It doesn't have to be how many YouTube followers and Instagram and Facebook followers we have right now. So that is another strategy, but it's not a primary strategy. And breaking is part of the overall online strategy too. So again, I went to like 4 different buckets I was talking about. Okay. Number 1 is this shop. I think it's going to stay that way. I feel confident that it's going to stay that way because we have so much traffic that walks in this shop.
And if I can interrupt for a second, it's actually, I'm blown away every time. I mean, I asked you, it's like, when can I come in? And I didn't want to make you do anything early or not on your own time. But you're like, why don't we do it before the shop opens? Because literally, I will get here like the minute the shop opens on like a random day of the week, and there'll be a line out the door. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
It makes me smile.
Every time I'm in here, it's packed. It's packed.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Thank you.
So that's all due to your hard work. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I think that you know, having it always feels to me like you put your customers that walk in here first.
Yes.
And I think that's probably where you're going to stay because that's what's most important to you.
Yeah, for sure.
Always
will be.
That's awesome. So to kind of wrap things up, and I usually don't give investment advice, but I want to know from you, who's the like 1 or 2 guys that you're buying now that you think 20 years from now is going to be the next like LeBron or Curry or, you know, I don't want to say Brady because I don't think anyone's going to be Brady.
Right. But, so more of your diamond in the rough type players?
Yeah.
So current market?
Yeah, like the guys that like maybe, you know, aren't getting the attention. Like Giannis would be a perfect example. Nobody thought Giannis was going to turn into anything, and he's
a beast.
He's what he is. So I'll give mine first. Anthony Edwards is my guy.
I like Edwards.
I just think that like he's very likable. Yeah. He's an incredible talent. If you watch him play, he plays with strength and he's grounded. He's not a guy like that goes to the rim and ends up on the ground a lot. So that's my guy. So I want to hear from you. Who's your guy?
Well, that's one of my guys for sure. I mean, I've bought a lot of good high-end Edwards myself, and probably more money than I even sunk into Andrew Luck. Let's say that sure. On Edwards. My number 1 guy that I think people can still get at incredibly good prices for what the rest of the market's going for is Jason Tatum.
That's a good call.
I love Jason Tatum. Yeah. I have loved Jason Tatum since day 1. I mean, I've got some monster Jason Tatum stuff that I have zero intention to move anytime soon because I think he's an incredible player on a big market team that has championship material written all over him with a core group of surrounding players that help him become a better player. And if you've looked at his numbers in the last 2 months,
unbelievable.
I think it's number 1 in the NBA. They were like, I know people are big on that plus-minus ratio.
Yeah.
He's number 1 in the NBA right now on plus-minus ratio. Yeah. So when he's on the court, he's the most effective person in the NBA.
Yeah.
So, You know, Luka's another big one. People love Luka. I think Luka's prices are too high.
Yeah.
I think he's got that 20-year guy, long-term potential that's going to be Larry Bird, LeBron James kind of type player. But if you compare Luka's prices to Tatum's prices, you got to buy Tatum. Yeah. You have to. It's like a 3-to-1 ratio.
Isn't Tatum like 22 or 23?
24 now.
Oh, he
just turned 24.
Yeah, he's still super young.
Yeah, but he's been in the league for 5 years. Yeah. I mean, but his ratio of like, let's just use a Prism Silver, for example. Right. You know, Luka's like 6,000, Tatum's 1,200.
Right.
Are you kidding me? In a PSA 10?
Yeah, and I think the thing that worries me about Luka too is his usage is so high.
It is.
That I worry about him burning out a little bit. Yeah. And you know, I could be wrong there, but like you say, I just think the cost of entry to Tatum is so much lower than Luka, and Tatum's got champion.
And I say Tatum not because I want my value of my cards to go up, because I already got what I wanted.
Of course.
So I don't want people to think I'm doing this to help myself out. I'm doing this to say, people, you need to pay attention. Devin Booker's another one of those too.
Yeah.
He's already kind of like 2 or 3 years ahead of Tatum. Yeah. So he's established and everything. But you know, Tatum's 6'8". He's as smooth as it gets. He can shoot the three. He's got a fadeaway jumper. He can get to the hole. He can defend. I mean, it's like in baseball, a 5-tool athlete, right? Like a Mike Trout. Tatum's got all those 5-tool aspects in basketball. Right. So, yeah.
Well, awesome, Andy. Thank you so much for
my pleasure,
taking
man.
the time.
Thank you so much too.
Appreciate you having me.
This is fun.
And if you guys are ever in Indianapolis, make sure to visit Indy Card Exchange here on the northeast side. Andy will take care of you, or whoever's in shop will take care of you.
That's right.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, that was fun.